Welcome to another Path of Exile 2 mechanics video. In the lead up to PoE 2's early access launch on December 6th, I'm covering the game's mechanics, how they work and how they differ from the same mechanics in Path of Exile 1 to create a resource that's useful for new players and veterans alike. You can check out the written guide, including the playlist for all of the Path of Exile 2 mechanics videos by following the link at the top of the video description below. This video is all about Leech. Let's get into it. Leech in Path of Exile is a mechanic that allows a character to recover a resource based on the damage they deal from a hit. But Leech does not interact with damage over time in any way. You can only leech based on the damage from a hit. The recovery from Leech is recovered over time by default. Now, the most common type of Leech is Life Leech, which recovers life over time based on damage dealt, but there are also modifiers which exist to allow a character to leech mana or energy shield. Unlike in other videos in this series, I'm not going to fully explain how Leech functions in PoE 1 because it's possibly the most overcomplicated mechanic I've ever seen in any game. Coming from someone who enjoys complex mechanics, even I can agree that Leech in PoE 1 is completely overcooked, and to explain it in this video would go against the concept of concise mechanic introductions that this series is supposed to present. Instead, if you wish to learn exactly how Leech works in PoE 1, I'll direct you to check out this very good 68-minute breakdown by Sergeant Minor right here. The TLDR of Leech in PoE 1 is that it's based on the damage taken by a monster after mitigation, and this number is multiplied by the sum of percentage damage Leech a character has. Each hit creates its own Leech instance, and Leech instances stack and apply their recovery simultaneously, and there's no cap on the amount of instances a character can have at any one time. Instances are capped at a default maximum of 10% of the resource, and each can recover up to a default maximum of 2% of the resource per second. Leech has an overall cap for recovery per second based on the resource. By default, that's 20% of maximum life, 20% of maximum mana, or 10% of maximum energy shield per second. Now that's Path of Exile 1, but you may be happy to hear that in Path of Exile 2, Leech is being significantly simplified, to the point that there is now only two relevant stats: the percentage of damage a character will leech, and a new mechanic in PoE 2, leech resistance on monsters. The amount of resource a character leeches is based on the damage a monster takes from a hit after mitigation, multiplied by the sum of percentage of damage dealt leeched as X resource that the character has. That total is then multiplied against the monster's leech resistance modifier to provide a final total amount of recovery that will recover the resource over time. For example, let's say a character in early acts has 2% of physical attack damage leeched as life and hits a monster with an attack ability. The monster takes 2000 physical damage from this hit, so the total leech amount is 40 life. The monster has 30% leech resistance, so the character recovers 28 life over time. Monster leech resistance is based on monster level and will generally increase the further you progress in the game. This system is not designed to make Leech ineffective against some monsters or bosses, and is instead intended to counter exponential damage increases that a character will ultimately experience over the course of progression, to present a somewhat balanced amount of Leech at any one point of game progression. For example, comparing Leech recovery in Act 1 to Act 6 should present a somewhat equal amount of Leech relative to the character's total resource pool. The only information that we don't have just yet is exactly how long a Leech instance will last for by default, but based on the interview Zizaran did with Rishi and Jonathan, their answers about Leech may suggest that a single Leech instance will recover the amount of resource over 1 second. I'll link the time-stamped interview in the description below if you're interested. We also know that instant Leech will exist in Path of Exile 2, based on the existence of the Vaal Pact Keystone, which makes all recovery from Life Leech instant, at the cost of preventing a character from using life flasks.